Now, we'll replace the hard-coded text in the print statement with the inputs from both the text fields. The handling of the input text inside the text form field is done using a text editing controller. If we dive into the definition of the text form field widget, we see that it has a controller parameter whose type is a text editing controller. This text editing controller, as the name suggests, is a simple controller for an editable text field. Hence, let's use this controller parameter for our bookmark title text form field and provide a new text editing controller as its value. Since we would want to use this controller somewhere else, let's extract it into a variable of its own. Let's call this variable title text controller. Since we wouldn't ever reinitialize this title text controller object, we can declare it as final. Also, since the controller's usage is inside the class only, we can refactor it to be private to this class as well by adding an underscore as its prefix. Let's copy this controller so that we can do something similar for the link input field as well, and hence rename this second controller to link text controller. Then add this controller to the second text form field using the controller parameter. To read the input of a text field, all we need to do is access the value of text from its controller. Hence, we replace the hard-coded text in the print statement with the input from the first text field, and another print statement to display the value from the second text field. Now on hot reloading, we observe that pressing the floating action button prints out our two print statements but with empty values. That's because our text form fields do not have any input in them. Once we add a certain input to both the fields, pressing the floating action button does print out the expected output. Next, we can make a couple of improvements to the user experience. It would be nice if the app transfers focus from the first field to the second field by tapping the bottom right key on the keyboard if they are currently typing in the first field. This bottom right key is usually known as the submit key. This requires us to hold a reference to the focus of the second field somehow so that we can let the first field know where to transfer the focus to once the user clicks the submit key on the keyboard. This reference to the text form field can be done using a focus node. Similar to the text editing controllers, let's create a new focus node called link focus node since the second text form field represents the link of the bookmark. The focus node is an object that can be used by a stateful widget to obtain the keyboard focus and to handle keyboard events. Let's go ahead and use this focus node inside the link's text form field widget. The onField submitted parameter controls what happens when the submit key is clicked when the text form field is in focus. This is of the type value changed, which is just another name for a function which takes in any kind of a parameter. In the case of onField submitted, this type is a string, which is the text input string entered inside the corresponding text form field. And then to finally transfer focus, we use the focus scope class that needs a context and the focus node that the focus needs to be transferred to. This is done using the request focus method. On hot reloading, we now observe that tapping the submit key when the focus key is in the first field transfers the focus to the second field. So this now works exactly as expected. The second improvement that we can make is a minor improvement to the icon of the submit key on the keyboard. When the first field is in focus, tapping the submit key moves the focus to the next field. Hence, the icon on this key should be the icon for next, which is denoted by an arrow instead of done, which is denoted by a check mark. For this use case, the text form field has a text input action parameter, which allows you to select a predefined enum value as per the use case. On hot reloading, we now observe that the submit key shows an arrow instead of a check mark when the focus is in the first field. Converting the stateless widget to a stateful widget allows us to override the dispose method. As stated in its docs, the dispose method is called when the state object will never be built again. Moreover, the part that is crucial for us says that subclasses should override this method to release any resources required by this object, which in our case are the two text editing controllers and one focused node. Hence, on all three of these objects, we can simply call dispose so that they can be disposed effectively. After all of our dispose calls, we must call the dispose method of its parent class as well, as mentioned in the docs.